Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
Thanks for joining us today. Today's show actually came as a request, and that request was, can you create a brief series kind of figuring out, am I a good fit for a franchise, and what does that process look like to finding that franchise? So what I decided to do was to really kind of simplify things and put together a 3-part series. And that series is called 3 Weeks to Finding Your Perfect Franchise. This is week 1 of 3. And, wanted to kind of simplify things and put things in perspective, kind of a simple way of viewing this to make the due diligence and the research less overwhelming, because a comment I receive is that I'm really overwhelmed. I'm looking at brands and I can't decide. And I'll just take a step back and say, well, let's figure out if a franchise is even a good fit to begin with. And let's go back to the basics. So what does 3 weeks to finding your perfect franchise mean? And we're not saying you're buying a franchise or investing in a franchise in 3 weeks. We're talking about, in 3 weeks, really getting clear on the ideal business and starting the due diligence process. I'm in no means saying to invest or buy a franchise in 3 weeks. So just to clarify. So where do we start? And really, this is a process. Just like investing in a franchise is a process, which we'll talk about on the next call. The researching of a franchise, there's definitely a process. And in that process is figuring out if a franchise is a good fit for you. Is it the appropriate vehicle? And we're making the assumption that business ownership is a vehicle and an appropriate fit. So in this episode, we're trying to figure out answer the question: am I a good fit for a franchise? So let's dive right in. So in figuring out, am I a good fit for a franchise? Number one thing to consider is, can you follow a process and can you follow a system? Extremely important. What is a franchise? It's a proven process, a proven system. This business has been put together, has been tested, and the franchisor has figured out the ideal way of running this particular business. So if you have trouble following a process, or you have a ton of experience in a particular industry and you want to run the business in a certain way, I would venture to say that franchising probably is not a good fit. And that process starts with our process. If you're unable just to follow the basic process of the due diligence process and the order of kind of how to do things, a franchise may not be a good fit. So I challenge everyone, what is a franchise and what's the value proposition? And it's really being able to empower people with a system that can get up and running relatively quickly with a lot of the processes and, policies and procedures and things like that, best practices all put in place for you. So the importance of, are you able to follow a system? Are you able to follow a process? Number one, extremely important. So something to think about. Number two is money. A franchise is going to, there's going to be an investment. So once you're awarded a franchise, the first thing you do is you're going to pay a franchise fee. And what I tell everyone is that these are, there's no money down types of scenarios. You need to cover usually the franchise fee. So what does that mean? Well, franchise fees will vary, and there are going to be obviously numerous funding options. But you're going to need at least 50,000 liquid and about 100,000 net worth, and that's combining your vehicles, your cars, your assets, your investments, all that in the net worth number. But you're going to need to cover a franchise fee. You get an SBA loan. You're going to put down whatever percentage they require and get the proceeds. But typically, the franchise fee is covered up front. Some people say, well, I don't have 50,000 liquid. Well, there are other avenues which we've covered in our funding podcast, how to fund a franchise, your complete guide. And a part of that is, being able to use equity in your home, SBA loans, and also being able to use Rob's plan, a retirement, or I should say, a retirement rollover business startup. And as part of that, it's usually coming from old traditional IRAs or retirement plans that you had with a previous employer. So visit that. I'm going to put that here in the show notes. your complete guide to funding your franchise. Excellent episode with Tara Thomas at FranFund. So money is going to be a factor as well. We want to make sure we have the money to invest in the business to get us through the first 3 to 6 months. We also, if we're running this full time and leaving our job, that we have funds available to cover our living expenses, and we cover that on the funding podcast. And then number 3 is time frame, and this is one that gets overlooked over and over again. And time frame is big because when you are looking at a franchise, you know, it's similar to kind of buying a home, right? It's not when the timing is right. You'll place an offer. When you find something you like, you place the offer, and hopefully that offer is accepted. With franchising, you know, territory availability, whether it be a territory location, is also going to be a factor, right? So if the territory is available today and you want to revisit 6 months later, odds are that territory may or may not be available. So once you have a time frame of just say of not opening but making a decision, I would say in 6 months or less, that's probably a good time to start the due diligence process. Start talking with the brands. Figuring out, you know, what territory. There's going to be an entire call on territory mapping and what that looks like. So that's going to be extremely important because you want to get that territory, the ideal territory location set up and selected. And then, you know, if there's any type of additions to zip codes or additional territories, that's all figured out so that the franchisor at some point will, as you move along the process and show interest and commit to a discovery day where you're actually visiting the franchisor, they're able to lock in those territories. So for X amount of time, assuming the franchise, you are awarded the franchise, you'll be locked into that location or to those territories. So let's recap. Need to be able to follow a process or system. Critical. Money, at least I would say on average, and this is averages, and franchise fees will vary, of $50,000 liquid cash. Money markets, cash, and things like that, and about $100,000 net worth would be a good starting point. And then time frame of 6 months or less to make a decision, not to be open in 6 months to make that decision in order to have that franchisor being able to really lock in that territory in those locations. So funding, you know, check that out in the show notes. Our new website also has an option up top called How It Works. If you click on that, it's going to go through this process as well. And it's also going to have a selection on goals because everyone's goals are going to be different. So another thing we talk about is, what are your goals? Are you looking, you know, have you lost your job and looking to replace? Are you thinking of leaving your job and maybe want to run the business part-time, semi-absentee? Or are you just looking for an investment? Are you a current business owner looking to build a diversified portfolio? And it talks a little bit more about each. I'm not going to get into detail today, but if you check out our brand new website, it's still the same, website, ggthefranchiseguide.com, and click on How It Works. We go into a lot more detail there. So hopefully you found this helpful. Week 2, we're going to talk about the consultation, where we talk about the ideal business characteristics, kind of your why in doing this in the first place. But hopefully you found this helpful. So, you know, again, if you are not able to kind of fulfill all 3 requirements, a franchise may not be a good fit today. You know, maybe the process you're okay with in the time frame, but you're light on cash, and that means putting together a plan of cutting back on expenses, or, you know, saving a little bit more and revisiting it in the next 6 months. Great. And, you know, we always follow up and provide guidance and feedback with everyone we work with. If you're just not okay with following a process, then obviously probably not a great fit. But, you know, the time frame could change, the money, depending on, you know, what you have access to. You know, sometimes you come across an investor or partner, silent partner, active partner, whatever that looks like. Even maybe the general manager may be someone that's vested in the business, where they're given some equity, or they are investing, some capital into the business to be a partner of whatever percentage. So 3 things to consider. Figure this part out before doing anything else and starting to look at brands and all that. And I think that'll help with making the process a lot easier, less overwhelming, you know, reduce that anxiety, and just make it fun. being very clear on there. And then we'll get into what the business looks like, and then we'll get into the specific brand. So hopefully you found this helpful. Again, thank you for your feedback. Thank you for the recommendations on this. And next is going to be week 2 of 3. We'll go through the consultation, what the ideal business looks like, and we'll spend a lot of time there. Thanks for joining us today, and talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.